Back with another race weekend, and this time we're in Singapore, the most physical track on the 2023 F1 calendar, and really the most physical track of all time in Formula One. This track is like a big Monaco with a lot of twisty turns, a lot of slow speed corners, and teams like to bring upgrades here because it requires a certain setup to actually perform well here. With a lot of curbs, some teams will have better advantages. I just went over it in my last video before. This is the only race that Red Bull could actually have difficulties in. Aston Martin are looking to be big here. Mercedes, McLaren is bringing upgrades. But the biggest teams that are bringing upgrades are McLaren, Red Bull, and Aston Martin. Now, with a few tweaks coming to the Mercedes cars and Ferrari cars. Now, for Ferrari, we know that up until the Austin GP, upgrades are continuously coming. In qualifying, they could be a threat here. They've been pretty good at braking and slow speed. It's the medium and high speed that kind of really gets them in the real wind turbulence, so it could be a good track for them. I don't expect them to be competing as high here, but they could catch me off guard. And with some new parts, maybe optimizing the way that the car is in slow speed, they could have a chance, especially in qualifying. Now in the race, I think their tires are going to shred, but regardless of that, they could be decent here. As for Mercedes, Mercedes is also bringing a few tweaks here as well. They have also announced that they're working on their W15 already. So everything that's coming to this car might just be an addition to the W15 or finding new paths for their W15. But this is a track that I expect Mercedes to excel at. The reasoning being that this new front wing that they brought has actually been really good for slow speed corners. In Silverstone, they were the best car in slow speed corners. Regardless of the straights, they were actually a very solid car there. Zandvoort, yet again, they were a very strong car there and almost on pace with Red Bull. Monza, different story, completely different for the car. Never was going to work out. But Merc will be very strong here. I expect them to have a very good Grand Prix weekend. Can they win the race? It's possible. With a good Lewis Hamilton performance, maybe pulls some 2018 lap out of his bag. That would be very impressive and fun to see. But now with the new track layout, it'll be difficult to say if they can actually get pole. Regardless, I think this should be a very good track for Mercedes with certain few parts coming. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It would mean the world for me. I'm on my road to 10K. And your support genuinely means everything. As I see all the comments below, tell me if I fixed the lighting. I think I fixed it a lot more for this video. I've been reading your guys' comments and I reduced the lighting in the back, enhanced it over here. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments if you guys are still at this part. Let's get back into now the biggest upgrades actually coming here. First team I want to talk about is McLaren because last year they brought a significant upgrade package to Singapore and they're doing it again this year. They were a team that performed very well in the Hungary Grand Prix, and I actually was shocked when they did. Hungary and Singapore have big differences to it. Hungary is not a very curb-reliant track. The Sector 2, that they were actually very strong in, did have some curbs though, and the McLaren was very powerful there. But they were best at in the medium speed corners of Hungary where they could really put down the traction of that car. This is all slow speed, but they are supposedly bringing a pretty big package here. I would say it's probably going to be oriented towards the rear end of the car because the rear end is still a little faulty, especially in these slow speed corners. The front is also pretty weak. They just have a very well balanced car when it comes to high speed and medium speed balance. But in low speed, the car is still very tricky to drive and they have to take a lot of V-shaped turns instead of a lot of U-shaped turns where on slow speed corners, that's almost ideal for how you need to drive. That's where you gain the most performance. Lando Norris talked about it some other Grand Prix ago. So I would expect them to be bringing a lot more balance changes to the car to really get this car in its key optimal state. They could be challengers here if these upgrades really bring out a lot of performance because they have struggled in slow speed. Singapore is one of the slowest tracks on the grid for a lot of slow speed. Maybe that middle sector helps them out. We'll have to see for McLaren, but great to see them still upgrading upon this car. Their huge performance gain has been significant. So I hope that they're kind of back here. They haven't been on the podium since, has it literally been since Hungary? So I hope that their pace is back here a bit. Next team bringing upgrades is Red Bull, and Helmut Marko claims that these are massive upgrades to the car. Well, the recent news is that these are not massive upgrades. And Helmut Marko tends to exaggerate a little bit when he starts talking about upgrades. He always says everything is so damn massive, but in reality, I don't think so. I think they're probably going to have some floor revisions just to edge it up a little bit. Maybe change up the beam wing in the back. They're probably going to use their Monaco spec of rear wing. They haven't really brought that many rear wings yet to the car. I would expect a lot of stuff to be rear oriented. The car is super well balanced. They don't need a lot of upgrades. Honestly, it's about them finding the setup because the floor could be compromised here. I talked about it in my last video with Red Bull. This is where they actually could not have an advantage as much as they usually do. That doesn't mean they won't be the fastest car here. They still very well could be. But regardless of that though, with this floor being so low to the ground, they're probably going to bring some revisions to have it actually higher but perform at a higher rate. Monaco, they were still super strong, so I don't expect them to be much weaker here. But the qualifying gap will probably not be a lot between Mercedes, Red Bull, and Aston Martin, especially with the upgrade package that is coming for the Aston Martin team. Red Bull will be strong here. The upgrades, like I said, probably a couple of floor revisions. Last team bringing huge upgrades. There's a lot to talk about here with Aston Martin. So their biggest performance gains came out of Monaco. This is where Alonso actually challenged for a pole position and took the fight with Max. If they actually pitted for the Inters, they would have been the car ahead. They actually had a chance at winning this. Now here in Singapore, it is a very particular layout, very similar to Monaco. Especially sectors 1 and 2 in Monaco. That is the most similar part, and that is where Aston was super strong. Since the Canada package where they introduced their big upgrades and also in Silverstone with the front wing, they've been very behind in spots that they used to be very good in. Now in Zandvoort they actually corrected those problems, but what were those problems? The problems were occurring in the rear part of the car. It says here in these newest upgrades that this new rear wing that they actually brought in Zandvoort is now more adaptable, and they're bringing a new front wing here. More parts are said to be coming into the side pod area and more into the rear of the car. This has kind of been rumored for a while now, and Singapore is supposed to be the spot that they're bringing it in. But the main focus is this rear part of the car. So what do? In Zandvoort, they actually brought a new engine cover, but in Monza, they used the engine cover with the shark fin. Why is this? Well, it shreds more drag, so they were actually able to go faster down the straights with the shark fin, but it also makes a different type of airflow towards the back of the car. Also, that engine cover is drooped down a lot lower for the shark fin, and this new one is a bit different. So optimizing the rear of the car is practically what we should expect for the package coming here in Singapore, as this track will be very rear oriented, but the amount of downforce and grip they need to have here is very important for really them to actually get their first win of the year and for Alonso to get number 33. This is a track where I think they have their best chance at yet. Last year, it was their best result. I expect them to be super strong here as well. Because of the Zandvoort upgrades and how they have worked with the car should be working here as expected. But let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of these upgrade packages? Do you think one team will be a lot better than the other? What are your thoughts on Mercedes and Aston actually challenging here? And will it be a closer race than the usual Red Bull dominance? Let me know your thoughts down below. Please leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.